Two crucial stats tell us so much about Thomas Tuchel's philosophy when it comes to this England side. These numbers went up to these numbers. They're crucial elements of what Tuchel's trying to implement, and it led to the touches in the penalty area going from this number, 34, up to this number, 69, and that was with 150 passes less than in the first game. So, what was the difference? We can explain why England's left back is here. We can explain why the reigning Premier League Player of the Year had to be dropped, and we can explain why 3 players with 12 caps between them could be key men for Tuchel moving forward. And yes, I know I've got new glasses. Smash the like button if you still love me. So let's talk about the lineups, and in particular I want to focus on the balance, and again I'm going to talk about progression a lot in this video. On paper it looked more like this. Gay, Lewis-Skelly supposedly playing left back, Reece James here, Declan Rice as that single pivot you wonder, Bellingham, Rodgers, but it didn't look anything like this at all. There were some big changes. Of course, Dan Burn went out. You had Reece James playing his first game in a very long time. Jared Bowen came in, and Phil Foden went out of this team, and there was a debut for Morgan Rodgers as well. This is the actual formation that we saw in this game, and there are some really key components in it. Lewis-Skelly is one, Jude Bellingham is another one, Morgan Rodgers is another one. As we've spoken about, Phil Foden wasn't in this team, and the reason why was that they were looking for a better balance. Lewis-Skelly played, yes, he stepped into being one of the sixes in the first game, but he still kind of had those responsibilities as the left back. In this game, he didn't put in a single cross against Latvia, because he was playing as one of the 2 sixes. Thomas Tuchel said it himself when he was describing a goal. One of our 2 sixes. That's because they were playing with 2 sixes. There literally wasn't a left back. It was a back 3. Gay was going to help out in that rest defence, and they were looking to suffocate and tilt the pitch and stay up the top end of the pitch. And you can see it from kickoff. Here is kickoff, and it's like charge. Literally 2 seconds into the game, the ball is here, going back to Jordan Pickford, and they're all on their way. And the reason for that is they want to assert that dominance. We move it on just a second, 3 seconds into the game, as you can see right here. 3 seconds into the game, and they're on the charge. These are the defenders, the centre-backs, and you can see the 3 already, and they're on their way because they wanted to assert that dominance on the opposition. I think that's something that's really important here, and we're going to get to that when we talk about the players involved. I think Thomas Tuchel wants personalities similar to him that are just incredibly mentally strong and do not take a backward step. And so in this, you have to enforce your dominance on the opposition, and we saw it in the first few seconds. The ball goes long, the ball is headed back out here, and there you have, look at that. You've got your 3 defenders in this instance as high as that. In fact, just in the corner of this, you can just about see Ezri Konsa, but that is the deepest player. That desire to assert dominance was something that Tuchel really, really wanted to do and will continue to do. You're not going to believe this, because yes, I've had the heater on, and yes, I've got a jumper on, but summer is coming, and thus you need to get yourself a Surfshark VPN, who are thankfully today's sponsor. So what even is Surfshark? Well, Surfshark is a VPN. It's a virtual private network, and it keeps your online data safe by encrypting all of the data between a device that you're using and the internet. And this is really crucial when using public Wi-Fi, but also when you're out and about on your holly bobs. That's another way for saying holiday. And if you use my link in the description, you can get a Surfshark VPN with 4 months extra for free. With a Surfshark VPN, you can change your real location to any location around the world, over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries. And this means a couple of things. First of all, you can access new content by exploring the Netflix libraries of Japan, USA, Australia, wherever you want to go. Also, when you're on holiday, which people do in the summer, you often can't watch your favorite sporting event. But with Surfshark, you can change your IP address back back to the UK and tuck into the kind of sporting coverage that you're used to, that suits you, that works for you. Masking your IP address is essential in becoming private online. A VPN ensures your city, country, and download history aren't linked to your identity. And Surfshark's Clean Web feature blocks ads, phishing attempts, tracking, and malware, allowing you to surf the web safely. And the final thing that sets Surfshark apart and provides even more value is that you can use your Surfshark VPN on unlimited devices. If you currently don't have a VPN, it just makes sense to have one to watch what you want, where you want, wherever you are safely. So check out the link in the description or just head to www.surfshark.com/Allcott for 4 months extra free. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk, so why not give Surfshark a go? So why, after getting man of the match, did Lewis-Skelly go into a slightly different, more central role in this one? The reason for it is found in the average positions, because you can see that in this first game, Curtis Jones was playing, and Curtis Jones was drifting into being that double pivot at times, as well as moving forward. But actually, just as important as Curtis Jones is actually Jude Bellingham. Because Jude Bellingham, as you can see, had to go to both sides of the pitch a lot of the time because he was trying to kind of figure things out, trying to create things, trying to make things happen. One thing we definitely learned from the 2 games is that Tuchel has given Jude Bellingham the keys, but he also wants to see him in the box. And so for him to get in the box and do what he can do and get his shots off and not have to go from side to side, something needed to change, especially against these kinds of oppositions. Because as you can see here, Curtis Jones had several touches, but in a deeper area. Jude Bellingham had touches on both sides. We move on to the Latvia game, and here's Bellingham. Now, he's not drifted over to that right-hand side as much, and he's had so many more touches and shots in the box. That's because he could stay over on that left-hand side, because Lewis-Skelly was in that double pivot. But also, importantly, Morgan Rogers was playing, and Morgan Rogers was staying higher up the pitch as part of that 3 in midfield, let's say. You've still got Jarrod Bowen on the other side. And when Rogers got on the ball, he was doing what Tuchel wanted, which was taking players on. And that is exactly why Curtis Jones maybe came out, but also, crucially, why Phil Foden came out. Let's give Miles Lewis-Skelly his flowers first and foremost, because when we talk about these 3 T's I'm going to talk about, one is that tilt, but the second one, it's a double T, a bit like Thomas Tuchel himself. It's tight tempo. So, Miles Lewis-Skelly, as we saw 5 minutes into the game, look how tight he is. Look how far across he is from where you would expect him to be as a normal left back. The reason for this is because when it comes to the skill set that he is so confident in this area of the pitch. But the same reason for it is to flatten the Latvian defence, because that's going to be difficult when their whole determination is to just stop the game, just to make life really difficult, just to clog up those central areas. So here's the ball, and they're going to play it over to Reece James, and Reece James is just going to pop it into Morgan Rogers, because the desire here is to get, first of all, past this line of a Latvian defence. But also, of course, in the end, you want to maybe flatten these guys out because they're just trying to be as compact as possible. But compact and flat are 2 different things. So suffocating, putting that pressure on them is really important. And then from there, you've got to go and create something. And that's what Thomas Tuchel realised, I think, in this game. Well, certainly from the first game, and progressed it into this game. As we move it along, as I say, Reece James able to get it round that first line of not the press, but the block, and get it into Morgan Rogers. And Morgan Rogers, what he does here, which is really nice, is he takes a touch and turns really quickly. And what that does is it drags the Latvians back. But from there, you need to keep them back. So now all of a sudden, they're here on the penalty box. Really, really important. He plays it off. He's made those yards. Jarrod Bowen comes back. Now, that feels like an opportunity for the Latvian defence to push out again and get that line a little bit higher, get the ball away from goal, not get on the toes of your own goalkeeper. But what's really nice here is that the ball comes back to Declan Rice, and this is where Miles Lewis-Skelly was so important. And moving forward against these kinds of teams, as opposed to a Lewis Hall, who will come back into the fold in some way, Miles Lewis-Skelly could be certainly the future for these kinds of games. Because you can see here, instead of staying out wide, he's actually trying to get in front of the referee. And there's a reason for that. It's about keeping these tight spaces with his other midfield pivot. He's coming towards Declan Rice instead of coming away. Most people would think, hang on a minute, the space is over on this side. Why are you doing that? And what he does is he gets it and he plays it back, and they go back that way. And the reason for this is to make the Latvian defence, and this is international football, you're going to have to find a way to make it compact, but make them flat as well. And as we move it along, the ball goes back, makes its way to Morgan Rogers, who now is out wide, interestingly, which is a comment that Tuchel said. Tuchel said at the end of the game, I think he's better out wide. And the reason he's better out wide is that when he was able to get the ball in these areas, he was able to drive. And what does that do? It brings these guys back. It doesn't allow them that breathing space to come out. And the most glaring element of this is in this same movement, because he goes to the byline. It's interesting here, actually. You can see Jude Bellingham pointing. He's pointing to go back because he wants the ball to get over to this side, but they're moving them back. He's moved them all back here. Now, the important thing is, with that pass going backwards, you don't want to let them truly get out, because you're building this pressure to allow yourself to get runners in the box. But of course, you then need to play the right pass. So as it moves on, this is a really, really telling moment for me, because right here, Reece James, I think in a different team, maybe a Southgate team, comes here, and gently, slowly recycles the play. But what it would allow would be for the defence to come out and the back line to come out, and that pressure doesn't continue. That tight tempo doesn't continue. But what we saw throughout this game, and throughout both games, two touch passes, as much as possible. And when you get to a point where you can either take on a player, that first thought has to be, can you take the ball forward? And have you got players who want to go forward with it as well? Which is going to lead us on to the last tee, which is really, really just probably the biggest one of all. But here you see that Reece James doesn't play the pass there. He plays it with the outside of his foot to Miles Lewis-Skelly, who, if he's over here, doesn't get on the ball. And that sustained pressure doesn't remain. The ball gets played. And Miles Lewis-Skelly, and this is just like the measure of the young man right now. He, I think, is annoyed. He's annoyed at Gay. He wants Gay to be here so that, again, you could really pen them in. And he opens up this time and he's expecting him to be there. But of course, he's here. And so when he plays the pass, you can see that he's actually really annoyed. He sort of looks up to the sky because he's like, I wanted you there. And that just says so much, I think, about him. There you go. Look, he looks up into the air. Brilliant. But Gay's actually on the move, which is great. He plays the ball. He plays the ball really, really quickly. And this was the thing when we're talking about tight tempo. It's been really tight, and you've penned them in. You've penned them in throughout. And once you get to this point where you've moved it over to the other side and they're all penned in, don't give them a second to get to you. Do something with it. Either go down the line, which Rashford did time and time again, or take a touch and put it in. And on this occasion, he takes a touch and he puts it in. He doesn't mess about. In the first game, he did do that. The passes in that Albania game were 863. In the game against Latvia, 693. In both games, total dominance, right? But when it comes to crosses and take-ons, it went through the roof. 14 attempted dribbles against Albania, 26 against Latvia. 14 crosses against Albania, 36 crosses against Latvia. This is the ground jewels map from the first half against Albania. And what you can see here, quite clearly in my opinion, is a problem here in this zone. And the alchemy between Kyle Walker, Curtis Jones and Phil Foden wasn't suitable for a game like this, or for what Thomas Tuchel is after right now. And he spoke about this after the game. He said that Foden needs closer connections. And he's also kind of touched on maybe the confidence of Phil Foden right now. But we all saw it. Phil Foden did not take on players. And that is not going to work for Thomas Tuchel, especially against these kinds of teams. If you look at the amount of times the ball was kind of given away, so much more was given away on that right-hand side. Part of that's down to Kyle Walker. Part of that is down to Phil Foden constantly coming back inside at times. And actually, I think there's a bit of a casualty here in terms of Curtis Jones. And question for you guys in the comments, against a better opposition. Do you want a Morgan Rogers, or do you want a more complete player or complete midfielder, let's say, someone who's going to drop deep a little bit more when you haven't got your absolute wholesale ability to just do what you want because the opposition's looking to curl up a little bit? These are the different questions that Thomas Tuchel's going to need to find out at times. I think the completeness of Curtis Jones could be really, really useful against a better opponent. But in games like this, take-ons and players with take-on ability, you've got to be taking on players. You've got to be displacing them. You've got to be destabilizing them. Sorry, that's the word that Eze was using when he talks about his goal. And it's a great goal that shows those examples of getting the ball, taking that touch, and being brave in terms of going forward. And here we have the successful take-ons, the dribbles, and the unsuccessful ones, just all the attempted ones in the first half. And in the second half, and you can see with the number 20, Jarrod Bowen doing so much more than Phil Foden. Phil Foden not on there, of course, and of course he came off. But Marcus Rashford doing much more in the second half. I think there was a clear message, a very, very clear message to this team that when you get on the ball, you either take 2 touches and move it on, you look to move forward, but also you need to take players on. And I think the best way I can explain it is this when it comes to the new generation of Tuchel player, because I don't think he'll be afraid to make those big decisions. And I think when I click this button here, dribble attempts, Morgan Rogers, Ezri Konsa. Who can we talk about Ezri Konsa, by the way? I think there are other positives in and around it. Reece James, of course, looked solid there. Of course, not outrageously tested. But Ezri Konsa, who got absolutely battered, by the way, and no one's going to talk about him. He was absolutely outstanding in both games. He has put a proper marker down, as Roy Keane would say, to be England's centre-back. Honestly, he was that good. I get it. It's Latvia. It's Albania. Calm down, Jim. But his ability to deal with stuff one-on-one so comfortably, to make the right tackles at the right time, but also on the ball. There was a great dribble at one point that he did in this game. It's that positive mindset, that mindset that Tuchel wants. Go and be on the front foot. Don't wait. Go and affect the game. And as I say, Morgan Rogers, Ezri Konsa, Rashford, who's back from nowhere, and the profile of Rashford is exactly what Thomas Tuchel wants. Now, in terms of successful attempts, there's not a huge difference. But that's not the point. It's about tiring out the opposition. It's about getting a corner from it. It's about gaining momentum. It's about affecting the game. Both that and late accelerations are going to be really, really important for Thomas Tuchel. He spoke about it. That was another quote from him talking about late accelerations for the Declan Rice goal. And if you think about the goals that have been scored here, 2 of them have come from those late accelerations. Miles Lewis-Skelly seeing it, Jude Bellingham does the turn, and then when he opens up, he's already gone. That's what leads to that goal. And the second goal against Latvia, Declan Rice now with a bit more freedom because Jude Bellingham had come off the pitch, making that late run into an area that the opposition just cannot deal with. These are the principles that Tuchel wants in this team. He wants tempo. He wants tilt. He wants take-ons. He wants late acceleration. He wants penetration. Easier said than done, but it comes from a mindset and a tempo. And also it comes from having the right players with the right profiles to affect the game. And so when we think about Thomas Tuchel's side moving forward, there is a huge place here for Morgan Rogers. Whenever Richie Eze scores his goal, it turns to Tuchel and he goes, see? And when he talks about the game after, he talks about him going with acceleration into the box. When he's talking about Marcus Rashford, a player not in great form, his final ball was poor a lot of the time, but can you do the right things for me? That's going to allow Harry Kane to score goals. That's going to allow Jude Bellingham to get in the box. That's going to allow for the balance of this team to be absolutely right. When it comes to Phil Foden, what I'm intrigued to see here is how could Tuchel retain his principles and retain the penetration that he wants, retain the amount of take-ons, retain the balance, but move forward with this team with Foden in the team. So how does this team look with Phil Foden in, if you're trying to crowbar him in, and against a better opposition, whilst getting the same penetration? Now, I'm not saying this is the future, but I wonder if we could see something like this. If it is to work for Foden, especially out wide, what needs to happen? I think he needs a little bit of help. And I wonder, you're not going to like this, if there could be a world where Henderson comes in and plays for this team against a better opposition. It gives you a defensive solidity. I thought Henderson's been quite impressive in the games that he's played. I don't see this happening. I'm just trying to figure out a way for Tuchel's principles to remain and Foden to play. And my wonder is allowing Foden to step into these areas here, having someone like Livramento to bomb on, and allowing Henderson to come in and fill. That is the only way I see Phil Foden right now playing in this team. And actually, if I'm honest, I think Phil Foden may well be on the bench for some time when it comes to this team, because the truth is, Reece James or Trent will be in this position, in this right back position. You have to play one of them, the two of them. Do you have the two of them looking to step up here with Lewis-Skelly? Hall, of course, is another player that can come and get involved in this. Livramento is not going to be the guy because of Trent or Reece James, in my opinion, unless Tuchel's super brave. Saka, when he comes back in, will play. Can you play Saka and Foden and Bellingham and Kane? Are we getting ourselves into similar problems here? And will he be better in these tight spaces with people coming in between him? Maybe. But his form, of course, has to pick up. But in terms of that confidence of those take-ons, it's very interesting to see Morgan Rogers here. But at the same time, Thomas Tuchel saying, I think he's better out wide, which means that there is a bit of a space here. There's a little space here for a wee Phil Foden to play with Saka, maybe. If it's not him, who else could it be? Or is there also a world where someone like Eze plays a solid part, even if it's from the bench? I don't think I see him starting. And also when we're talking about the bench, and this is the thing, it's not about 11 players. It's about so much more than that. I think that would be a shame, because I think Bellingham, Lewis-Skelly and Rashford, I liked it over there. And Bellingham not having to get involved is nice. And Trent, I've said it so many times, that cross in from here could be really, really nice. But I'm also fascinated. I'm also absolutely fascinated by Morgan Gibbs-White. Because what Tuchel wants is he wants those touches in the box. He wants that penetration. And I think if you think of this sort of second striker, which I've been thinking about a lot recently, and on paper it's suggesting that you're a midfielder. But with the way that football is and how you build up through the thirds and things like that, actually going and being able to go and get involved and enjoy that is something that Bellingham did brilliantly. But if Bellingham's not always going to be there, and he nearly got sent off in this game, Tuchel is going to need a contingency plan if Bellingham, for whatever reason, gets sent off or gets injured. And I just wonder if Morgan Gibbs-White could be an interesting option as well. We've seen plan A when it comes to the lesser nations. What will plan B and plan C look like? Let me know in the comments down below.